Nancy Drew, Mystery Stories, The Mystery at Lilac Inn. Hi everyone, if you're just joining, I will be reading Nancy Drew Mystery Stories. This is number 4 in the series, The Mystery at Lilac Inn. I had already started a little bit of this in some shorts, so if you were able to check those out, great. It is a really great book. A lot of amazing things happening in here. There's really good artwork as well. Right now I don't have the ability to go ahead and edit videos, so we're gonna just have it sit on here for right now. But let's get into it. It's Roman numerals. I'll be honest, I can't read Roman numerals, so I could be on chapter 8, I could be on chapter 9. I'm not quite certain. I'm not going to start from the beginning because I did do that in the shorts. I've read a little bit more ahead since then. But I will go ahead and read the full book if you would like to. But here we go. This is a very exciting chapter. Chapter whatever, The Search. Back in the cottage, Nancy was awakened by an insistent ticking. She sat up and glanced in annoyance at her alarm clock. It certainly seemed noisy. Suddenly, Nancy realized that her friend's bed was empty. "Helen?" she called. Thinking that perhaps the other girl had gone to get a glass of water, there was no reply. Where can Helen be at 1:30 in the morning? Nancy asked herself. Hurriedly, she put on her robe and slippers and picked up her flashlight. When she found the front door of the cottage unbolted, she felt a pang of alarm. Outside, Nancy searched the cottage area, calling her friend's name again and again. No response. Finally, thoroughly alarmed, Nancy decided to ask John for help. She knocked on his door. No answer. Perplexed, Nancy was about to leave when a twig crackled a short distance away. She turned off her flashlight and crouched behind a low shrub. Who was approaching? She was relieved a moment later to discern the familiar outline of John. "Oh, thank goodness," Nancy explained, hurrying toward him. "Have you seen Helen?" she asked. "I woke up and found her gone." "No, I haven't seen her," John replied. "I couldn't sleep, so I walked down the road. Come on, we'll look for her." They started across the lawn. "Let's check the inn first," Nancy proposed. "Maybe Helen's there." The ground seemed eerie in the moonless night as the couple walked quickly, beaming their flashes ahead of them. They circled the inn. The place was completely dark with the exception of the tiny nightlight in the main lobby. Nancy suggested they try all the doors. If one is unlocked, it may mean Helen is inside. The front, rear, patio, and kitchen doors were securely bolted from the inside. Perhaps Helen couldn't sleep and went for a walk near the river, John suggested. Quickly, he and Nancy went to the waterfront. Starting with the area near the dock, they proceeded along the bank, calling Helen's name. As they came to the lilac grove, John said, "I don't think—" He was interrupted by a low moan which came from beyond the lilac bush. The couple hurried toward it, and Nancy, focusing the beam of flashlight on the ground. "Helen!" she explained in horror. Before her lay her friend unconscious. Quickly, Nancy and John knelt beside Helen. John held the flashlight while Nancy made a rapid examination. Helen's pulse was normal, but there was an ugly lump on the back of her head. John looked grim as Nancy chafed Helen's wrists. "She must have been struck by a blunt instrument," he said. Helen's eyelids flicked open. For a moment, the girl looked terrified. Then Nancy smiled feebly as she recognized John and Nancy. What happened?" she murmured. "Don't talk," Nancy said soothingly. But Helen insisted upon sitting up. "Oh, my head," she groaned, and leaned against Nancy. A few minutes later, the injured girl was able to talk. She explained about leaving the cabin and walking toward the lilac grove, then told of the strange figure in the white she had seen. Helen described the long translucent robe the figure had worn. The last thing I saw was that ghostly figure waving her arms back and forth as if signaling to someone. Then I was struck on the head and blacked out. Don't talk any more, said John, as Helen sighed wearily. We'll go back to the cottage and Nancy will put you to bed. John carried Helen and with Nancy's guiding light headed towards the cottage. They had hardly started when the trio was startled by a loud boom. It seemed to come from the distance, from the direction of the cottages. That sounded like an explosion, cried Nancy. She broke into a run. John, carrying Helen, followed as fast as he could. A moment later, Nancy heard a crackling noise and smelled smoke. John, she cried in horror, look! Our cottage is on fire! The young people started ahead in dismay. Tongues of orange-red flames were indeed shooting upward from the girls' cottage. The trio could already feel the heat from the blaze. We'll have to douse it, John said tensely. The whole row will burn if we wait for the fire department. Helen insisted she was strong enough to walk. I can help. John raced to the side of the inn where the extension water hose was attached. Get the buckets near the kitchen door, he shouted to the girls. They dashed toward the inn. At the same time, the hall lights came on and the front door was flung open. Emily, Maud, and Miss Willoughby, dressed in robes, rushed out. Behind them was Mr. Daly, carrying a Revolutionary War musket. Each group was amazed to see the other, but Nancy took no time asking questions. Our cottage is on fire, she announced. Soon everyone joined in tossing bucket after bucket of water from the garden spigot onto the blaze. John played a steady stream from the hose. Gradually, the blaze was reduced to embers. Glad we saved the other units anyhow, John said, glancing at the ruined guest cottage. Too bad you girls lost all your clothes. But saved our lives by not being in the cottage, Nancy remarked grimly. How did the fire start? What caused the explosion? Emily asked, explaining that she and the others had been awakened by the noise. I believe, said Nancy gravely, it was caused by a time bomb, which someone had placed in our cottage before we went to bed. A ticking sound woke me, and I thought it was my clock. The listeners were shocked. Mrs. Willoughby grew deathly pale as Maud shrilled, There must be a lunatic around here. I'm going to go ahead and end that there. That was pretty exciting. There's a lot more to happen. Thank you for listening.